The air in courtroom 3B was so thick with resentment, you could practically taste the bitterness. On one side sat Mark Walker, immaculate in a custom-tailored Brioni suit, his posture radiating a smug confidence. On the other, his wife, Alice Walker, looked like a pale shadow. She clutched a simple cloth handbag, her off-the-rack navy dress seeming to shrink around her. The judge was moments from ruling on alimony when Mark's lawyer asked him one final, condescending question. Mark leaned into the microphone, a smirk playing on his lips, and said, "Look at her. She needs the support. She hasn't earned an honest dollar in her life." And in that moment, the entire case, and Alice's entire life, was about to detonate. The Walker marriage, from the outside, was the envy of their affluent Boston suburb. Mark Walker was a high-flying partner at a private equity firm, a man who commanded rooms and stock prices with the same ruthless efficiency. Alice Walker was the perfect accessory, graceful, quiet, and impeccably maintained. Their colonial-style home was featured in Boston Home magazine. Their 2 children, now in prestigious boarding schools, were perfect. The illusion was flawless. But behind the Farrow and Ball painted walls, the house was a silent battlefield. Mark's control was absolute. It wasn't loud or physically violent. It was a slow, suffocating erosion. He managed all the finances, providing Alice with a generous household allowance, which she had to account for in a detailed spreadsheet. "Accountability is the cornerstone of success, Alice," he'd say, tapping his Mont Blanc pen on the kitchen's granite island. Her career had been a brief stint as a software developer, a job she'd loved, but had been convinced to leave when their son, Thomas, was born. "I make more in a day than you did in a month, darling," Mark had said, not unkindly, but as a simple statement of fact. "Your place is here. Manage the house. It's an important job." So she managed. She managed the fundraisers, the parent-teacher conferences, and the catering for his endless networking dinners, and in her managed, curated, suffocating silence, she found a lifeline. It started small. She loved to knit, a habit her grandmother had taught her. She found the online knitting community, Ravelry, a place of vibrant creativity. But she, a former developer, saw a flaw. The platforms for selling patterns and supplies were clunky, outdated, and took a huge commission. While Mark was on late-night calls with Tokyo or London, Alice sat in her small, converted attic study. She opened a book on Python she'd hidden under the guest bed. She started coding. She called it her knitting project. "What are you always tinkering with up there?" Mark asked one night, standing at the attic door, already in his pajamas. Just a little database. For my knitting patterns," she mumbled, quickly minimizing the screen full of code. He chuckled. "A database? How cute. Don't stay up too late, Alice. You look tired and the Carltons are over for brunch tomorrow. I need you sharp." He closed the door. Alice turned back to the screen. "A database," she whispered. She was building a fully integrated marketplace. A SaaS, software as a service, platform where designers could upload, manage, and sell their digital patterns, and yarn stores could fulfill supply orders directly, all for a tiny transaction fee. She called her LLC Artisan Folio, registered in Delaware, 1,000 miles from her life. For the first year, it made nothing. The second year, it cleared $5,000. Mark was promoted, and they celebrated at the exclusive restaurant No. 9 Park. He bought her a Cartier watch. She used her $5,000 to hire a freelance UI designer in Ukraine. The third year, her platform exploded. The pandemic hit. The world locked down, and everyone, it seemed, wanted to knit or bake or craft. The artisanal maker movement wasn't just a hobby, it was a global market. Her platform was the new, streamlined, user-friendly standard. The money, funneled into a Delaware-based LLC, became staggering. She lived two lives. In one, she was Alice Walker, who had to ask her husband for $300 to buy new running shoes. In the other, she was A.W., the silent founder of Artisan Folio, a company that was, by the end of its fourth year, generating over $2 million in net profit annually. She had a wealth manager, a separate legal team, and a portfolio that would have made Mark's eyes water. She never spent a dime of it. Not on herself. It was her escape hatch. It was her secret power. The end of the marriage came just as swiftly as her success. It wasn't the money. Mark never found out. It was the contempt. He had been seeing one of his junior analysts, a 24-year-old named Tiffany. He didn't even bother to hide it well. When Alice finally confronted him, her voice shaking, he was almost bored. "Alice, let's be realistic," he'd said, adjusting his tie in the hall mirror. "We're more like business partners. And honestly, the business is failing. I'm leaving. I'll be fair, of course. I'll make sure you're comfortable." He filed for divorce. He was the one who left. He was the one who, in his legal filings, claimed he was the sole financial provider and that his non-working wife was entitled to support, but that her unrealistic expectations needed to be managed. He had no idea the woman he was divorcing wasn't just Alice. He was divorcing A.W., and A.W. was about to liquidate his entire world. The legal battle began, and it was as brutal and one-sided as Mark intended it to be. He hired James Donovan, a notorious bulldog from the high-powered Boston firm of Sterling and Croft. Donovan was known for tearing dependent spouses to shreds on the stand, painting them as greedy, lazy, and vindictive. Alice, in turn, hired Olivia Hayes. Ms. Hayes was the opposite of Donovan. She was a partner at a small, all-female firm, known for her meticulous preparation rather than courtroom theatrics. She wore understated Ann Taylor suits and had a gaze that missed nothing. In their first meeting, Alice laid it all out. She sat in Olivia's quiet, sunlit office, hands shaking. I have a business." Olivia nodded, expecting a small Etsy shop, something to argue for as a potential for self-sufficiency. "Here are the P&L statements," Alice said, sliding a thin USB drive across the desk. "And the statements for the brokerage accounts. It's all managed by Morgan Stanley. My advisor's name is Michael Chen." Olivia plugged the drive into her computer. Her face remained perfectly, professionally neutral, but her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She clicked through files, her mouse clicks the only sound in the room. She saw the LLC registration, the SaaS platform's user metrics, the wire transfers from Stripe, the brokerage account. She clicked on the final summary. She looked at Alice. She looked back at the screen. "Ms. Walker." "Alice," Olivia said, her voice quiet. "Your net worth. You are aware that this is north of $12 million? Alice nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "He doesn't know. He called it my cute database. He told me I was bagged with money. He gave me an allowance. I needed to know I could. I needed a way out. I never used it. I was too scared." Olivia leaned forward, her expression shifting from loyally to something fiercely protective. "Alice, you are not bad with money. You are a self-made, multimillionaire tech founder. You are, to be frank, the most successful client I have ever represented. And you are not scared anymore." "He wants the house," Alice whispered. "He wants everything." "He can have the house," Olivia said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "We'll let him fight for it. We'll let him run up his legal fees. We'll let him posture. But the disclosure, don't we have to file it? Oh yes, Olivia said, her eyes gleaming. We will be 100% transparent. We will file every single page, the P&Ls, the bank statements, the corporate structure. We will bury them in the truth. And I will bet you my bar license that Mark and his bulldog lawyer won't even read it. Why? Because, Olivia said, printing the first document, he has already decided who you are. He believes you are nothing. When a man like Mark Walker looks at a document that says, Alice Walker, LLC, net assets, $12,450,000, he won't see the truth. He'll see a typo. He'll see a desperate bluff. He will dismiss it, and Mr. Donovan will dismiss it right along with him. And that arrogance, that is what we will use to hang them. The strategy was set. It was called the art of the undervaluation. They would comply. They would be quiet. They would let Mark build his own gallows. The financial disclosures were sent, thousands of pages of digital files, and just as Olivia predicted, the response from Donovan's office was a joke. In a pre-trial mediation, Donovan sat across the table, looking bored. Ms. Hayes, he sighed, adjusting his cufflinks, my client is prepared to be generous. He's offering your client the house, fully paid off, a $2.5 million value, and a $1.2 million lump sum alimony. That is more than generous for a woman with no job history for 2 decades. We consider this matter closed. My client rejects the offer, Olivia said coolly. Donovan laughed. Rejects it? On what grounds? That she'll do better in court? My client is a lion in this city. Your client is, well, we've all seen her. She's not going to hold up on the stand. What about the assets in my client's disclosure? Olivia asked, tapping her pen. Specifically the value of Artisan Folio, LLC. Donovan actually waved his hand dismissively. Oh, that. The Knitting Club website. We saw the numbers you put on it. Very creative. A valuation of $12 million. For a pattern website? My paralegal had a good laugh. We're assuming you meant $12,000 and there was a typo. To be honest, we're not even going to pursue it. It's de minimis. We'll let her keep her little hobby money. Olivia just smiled. I see. Then my client's hobby is not a point of contention. Hardly, Donovan scoffed. Now, about the house. No, Olivia said, standing up and gathering her papers. I believe we're done here. My client is not interested in your client's generous offer. We will see you in court. Donovan was stunned. You're making a mistake. We will crush her. We will go for costs. We will prove she's an unfit, unstable, grasping. You do that, Olivia said, pausing at the door. You just make sure you've read your file, Mr. Donovan. All of it. She walked out, leaving a furious and slightly confused legal team behind. Mark, who had been on his phone, looked up. What was that? Is she crazy? She's bluffing, Donovan snarled, his face red. She's got nothing, and she knows it. Fine, she wants a war. She'll get one. The weeks leading up to the trial were a special kind of hell for Alice. Mark, enraged that she had refused his generous offer, decided to turn up the pressure. He was waging a social war. Suddenly, friends Alice had known for 20 years were too busy for coffee. Invitations to fundraisers and book clubs dried up. She found out Mark had been telling their mutual friends a carefully crafted story, that Alice was suffering from a breakdown, that she was deeply unstable and spending money we don't have. He was the long-suffering husband, just trying to protect the family assets from his erratic wife. The cruelty was a precision strike. He knew exactly where to cut. He called their son, Thomas, at boarding school, and confided in him about his mother's issues. Thomas, young and idolizing his powerful father, became distant, his calls to Alice short and clipped. "Dad's just worried about you, Mum. Maybe you should just take the offer. He's being really fair." Alice's world shrank to her small rented apartment, her laptop, and Olivia Hayes's office. "This is standard," Olivia told her, her voice a steel rod of reassurance as Alice cried over her son's betrayal. "He's trying to isolate you. He's trying to break you down before you even get to the stand. It's a classic abuser's tactic. Don't let him win. Focus on the facts. Focus on the finish line." The finish line was courtroom 3B in front of Judge Maria Sandoval. Judge Sandoval was known as the calculator because she had zero patience for emotional displays and a razor-sharp focus on the balance sheet. She detested showboating lawyers and had been known to tear apart any argument not supported by cold, hard data. In short, she was Mark and Donovan's worst nightmare and Olivia Hayes's dream judge. "This is good for us," Olivia explained, prepping Alice. "Donovan is going to go in there and try to perform. He's going to paint you as a hysterical, gold-digging woman, and Judge Sandoval is going to hate him for it. Your job is to be the opposite. Be calm, be factual, be the woman who runs a $12 million company. Answer only the question asked. We are not here to cry. We are here to count." Meanwhile, in the offices of Sterling and Croft, James Donovan was preparing Mark for his performance. "They're desperate," Donovan said, pacing his mahogany-walled office. "They have nothing. This artisan folio thing. I had my paralegal look it up. It's a website for old ladies to sell doilies. She probably thinks a hit on her site is worth $1. It's a fantasy. We're going to paint her as delusional." "She is delusional," Mark agreed easily, sipping an espresso. "She hasn't worked a real day in her life. The money I made? That's real. I built that. She just hosted. She hosted parties. She hosted playdates. That's not a contribution. That's a lifestyle I paid for." "Exactly," Donovan said, pointing a finger at Mark. "That's your narrative. You are the sole provider. You built an empire. You graciously offered to set her up for life, and in her instability, she refused, demanding more. You are not angry, Mark. You are sad. You are disappointed in the woman she's become." "I can do that," Mark said, a slow, practiced look of sorrow settling over his features. "Sad. Disappointed. Got it." The day before the trial, Alice was a wreck. She was pacing her small apartment, the doubt creeping in. "What if he's right?" she whispered to her sister, Sarah, who had flown in from Chicago. "What if I am nothing? The money? It doesn't feel real. It's just numbers on a screen." "Mark, he's real. The house is real. The way everyone looks at me, that's real." Sarah, who had despised Mark for 20 years, grabbed her sister's shoulders. "Alice, look at me. Do you know what he is? He's a bully. And bullies only have power when you're scared of them. That money is the realest thing you've ever had. You earned it. You built it from nothing, in the dark, while he was strutting around in the light, taking credit for your entire life. Tomorrow, you are going to walk in there and just turn on the lights. That's all. Just turn on the lights." Alice took a deep breath. She thought of the code she wrote. She thought of the 50,000 users on her platform. She thought of the letter from a woman in rural Idaho who said Artisan Folio had saved her family farm. "Okay," Alice said, her voice small but firm. "Let's turn on the lights." The courtroom was precisely as intimidating as Alice had feared. The dark wood paneling, the high ceilings, the emblem of the state behind the judge's bench. It was all designed to make a person feel small, Mark and his legal team took up the entire left side of the plaintiff's table, a fortress of leather briefcases and Armani suits. Alice and Olivia Hayes were a small, quiet presence on the right. Judge Sandoval entered. "Walker versus Walker," she announced, her voice booming. "Mr. Donovan, you may begin." Donovan was, as Olivia predicted, a performer. He painted a picture of Mark Walker as a titan of industry, a loving father, and a generous husband who had been betrayed. "Here we have a man," Donovan declared, "who gave his wife everything. A beautiful home, a life of luxury, the privilege of raising their children without the burden of work. And now that his greatest successes are realized, she wants to bleed him dry. She comes to this court with fantasies, with doctored documents, with a complete detachment from reality, all in a greedy attempt to take half of what he built." When it was Mark's turn on the stand, he played his part perfectly. He was the picture of sad disappointment. "Mr. Walker," Donovan asked, "can you describe your wife's contribution to the marital assets?" Mark sighed, a theatrical gesture of regret. I wish I could. Alice, she's a wonderful mother, of course, but a financial partner? No, I handled everything. The investments, the mortgages, the planning. Alice, she had her hobbies, her knitting, her garden club. I encouraged them. I thought it was good for her to have little projects. And these little projects, did they ever contribute financially? No, not at all, Mark said, laughing gently. I mean, I think she sold a few scarves at a school bake sale once, maybe made $20. It was cute. The courtroom was cold. Judge Sandoval was typing on her computer, her face impassive. And now, Donovan continued, she is claiming, what is it, that she has a business? This artisan folio? Yes, Mark said, shaking his head. I've seen the documents. I'm worried about her. The numbers they're fantasies. It's just not real. I think the stress of the divorce has unmoored her. I'm very, very concerned. The air was sucking out of Alice's lungs. He was painting her as insane. She looked at the jury box. No, this was a bench trial. Only the judge mattered, and the judge was unreadable. Then it was Olivia Hayes's turn to cross-examine. Mr. Walker, Olivia began, her voice calm and neutral. You stated that your wife never contributed financially to the marriage. That's correct, Mark said, confident. And you stated that her business, Artisan Folio, is a fantasy and that the numbers are not real. Yes, she's not well. So you are claiming, under oath, that your wife has no meaningful income or assets of her own. A trap. Mark sensed it, but his ego was too big. He saw a gotcha moment. Mr. Donovan, Mark said, turning to his lawyer with a smirk. Perhaps we should just show the court. My wife's income. He turned back to Olivia. Yes, I am stating that. My wife is, for all intents and purposes, unemployed. She has no marketable skills. She has not held a real job in 20 years. He was looking directly at Alice now, his eyes filled with a cold, victorious contempt. He saw her flinch, and it empowered him. In fact, Mark said, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a confidential, condescending tone. Your Honor, I am the real victim here. I am being extorted. I built a life, and she is trying to burn it down because I moved on. This entire proceeding is a joke. Mr. Walker, you will address the court through your lawyer, Judge Sandoval said, her eyes narrowing. But Mark was on a roll. He was a lion, just as Donovan said. This woman, he said, gesturing at Alice, a dismissive, backhanded flick of his wrist. "She is asking for $5,000 a month in alimony. 5,000! Your Honor, she wouldn't know how to earn a real dollar if it hit her in the face. She has spent the last decade doing nothing. Absolutely nothing." The insult hung in the silent courtroom. It was so potent, so filled with venom that Alice visibly recoiled. Donovan was smiling. He had his sound bite. He had his case. Alice looked at Olivia, her eyes screaming. Olivia Hayes stood up. She did not look at Mark. She looked at the judge. "Your Honor," Olivia said, her voice clear and cutting through the silence. "Given Mr. Walker's testimony, I believe this is the appropriate time to clarify the actual assets of Ms. Alice Walker. I am calling, as my first witness, Mr. Michael Chen, a senior vice president from the Morgan Stanley Wealth Management Division." Mark's smile froze. Donovan's head snapped toward Olivia. "Objection! Relevance! This is a surprise witness." "He's on her witness list, Mr. Donovan," Judge Sandoval said, looking at her screen. "You just didn't read it. Overruled. Ms. Hayes, call your witness." Michael Chen was the opposite of Mark Walker. He was young, sharp, and wore a simple, modern suit. He carried a locked aluminum briefcase, which he placed on the witness stand and opened. He was all data. No drama. "Mr. Chen," Olivia began, "can you please state your relationship with Ms. Alice Walker?" "Ms. Walker is a client of my wealth management team. Specifically, she is the sole owner and managing director of the Artisan Folio LLC, and I am the primary advisor for her personal and corporate investment portfolios." Mark was shifting in his seat. "Wealth management? What is he talking about?" He hissed at Donovan, who was starting to look pale. "Mr. Chen, Mr. Walker has just testified that Artisan Folio is a hobby and a fantasy. Can you clarify for the court what Artisan Folio is?" "Certainly," Chen said. He projected a slide onto the courtroom monitors. Artisan Folio is a proprietary software-as-a-service e-commerce platform. It is the market leader for small-batch textile and craft artisans. As of our Q3 report, the platform has 72,000 active, paying vendor accounts and processed over $85 million in gross merchandise volume last year. A quiet gasp came from the back of the courtroom. Mark Walker's face had gone from tan to a sickly, mottled white. "He's lying!" Mark shouted, standing up. That's impossible." "Mr. Walker, sit down," Judge Sandoval snapped. "Another outburst like that, and you will be held in contempt. Mr. Donovan, control your client." Donovan, his own face ashen, pulled Mark back into his seat. "Mr. Chen," Olivia continued, "the defense has received all these documents, but for the record, can you please state the net revenue of Artisan Folio for the last fiscal year?" Net revenue, after all expenses, was $412,000. "And can you tell the court the total value of assets held by Ms. Walker, including her corporate holdings and her personal portfolio, which you manage?" "Objection," Donovan stammered, standing. This is prejudicial. It's a fantasy." "Are you objecting, Mr. Donovan?" Judge Sandoval asked, leaning forward. "To the sworn testimony of a senior vice president from Morgan Stanley, who has provided certified bank records and tax returns? Are you claiming he is part of this fantasy?" Donovan looked at the judge, at the witness, and at the reams of data on the screen. He saw the file they had dismissed, the typo. He sat down, defeated. "Withdrawn, Your Honor." "Mr. Chen," Olivia said, "please answer the question." "As of this morning," Chen said, looking at a final printout, "Ms. Walker's total liquid and invested assets are valued at $12,890,450. Silence. Not just quiet. A heavy, absolute, deafening silence. Mark Walker was staring, his mouth slightly open, not at Alice, but at the screen. He was recalculating. You could see the numbers clicking behind his eyes. The $2.5 million house, the $1.2 million offer. His entire generous proposal was an insult. "But how?" he whispered, to no one. She knits." Olivia Hayes turned to look at Mark, and for the first time her face held a trace of a smirk. "Mr. Chen," she said, "one final point of clarification. Mr. Walker testified that his wife wouldn't know how to earn a real dollar. Can you tell the court who built the artisan folio platform?" "Ms. Walker did," Chen said simply. "She is the sole developer of the core code. In fact, she holds 2 U.S. patents for her proprietary dynamic inventory and supply algorithm. We've had several acquisition offers, but she has, to date, refused them all. She seems to enjoy running the company." Olivia Hayes walked back to her table. "No further questions, Your Honor." Donovan sat in his chair, a collapsed balloon. No questions," he mumbled. Mark was trembling. It wasn't just the money, it was the humiliation. It was the realization that the quiet, unremarkable woman he had dismissed, controlled, and cheated on was, in fact, a stone-cold genius. She was smarter than him. She was richer than his entire firm's partner buy-in. He had been married to a dragon and had mistaken her for a kitten. All eyes turned to Alice. She sat straight, her hands no longer shaking. She looked for the first time, not at her husband, but at the judge. Her expression was calm, clear, and in control. She was no longer Alice Walker, the dependent spouse. She was A.W., the founder, and she was here to collect. Judge Sandoval adjusted her glasses. She looked at Mark Walker, and her expression was pure ice. "Mr. Walker," the judge began, her voice dangerously quiet, "you have, for the past 2 hours, painted a picture of your wife as an unstable, unintelligent, and financially incompetent woman. You have done so under oath. You have called her delusional, erratic, and stated, and I quote, 'She hasn't earned an honest dollar in her life.'" Mark's face was slick with sweat. He tried to speak. "Your Honor, I was not. I was misinformed. You were misinformed?" Judge Sandoval cut him off. "These financial disclosures, filed by Ms. Hayes's office, have been in your lawyer's possession for 6 months. They include full P&Ls, tax returns, and SEC filings. You mean to tell me that, as a partner at a private equity firm, you are incapable of reading a balance sheet?" Or is it," the judge continued, her voice rising, "that you were so blinded by your own arrogance and misogyny that you simply could not believe the woman you dismissed as a housewife was capable of this?" She gestured to the monitor, which still showed the $12.8 million figure. Mark was silent. He was ruined. "Mr. Donovan," the judge said, turning her fury on the lawyer, "you accused opposing counsel of filing fantasy documents. You called a multi-million-dollar corporation a knitting club. You came into my courtroom unprepared, having failed to do the most basic due diligence, all because you, too, bought into the narrative that your client's wife was a nobody. You should be ashamed. I am strongly considering filing a motion for sanctions." Donovan shrank in his seat, his career flashing before his eyes. "And now," the judge said, "we turn to the matter of assets." She began to speak, and it was a public dissection. "The marital home, valued at $2.5 million. Mr. Walker has fought to keep this home. Ms. Walker has stated she has no interest in it. The home is awarded to Mr. Walker." Mark looked up, a tiny spark of hope. "However," the judge continued, Ms. Walker's contribution to this marriage was not nothing. It was, in fact, the entire support system that allowed Mr. Walker to build his own career. Furthermore, Mr. Walker has engaged in a pattern of financial and emotional concealment, not from his wife, but about his wife, to the court. He has committed perjury. Donovan's head hit the table. Therefore, to offset the equalization of assets, Mr. Walker will buy out Ms. Walker's half of the home's equity. A payment of $125 million to be made to Miss Walker within 90 days. What? Mark sputtered. Furthermore, the judge said, ignoring him, we come to alimony. Miss Walker has, of course, waived all rights to alimony. Her financial independence is secure. The judge gave Alice a small, respectful nod. However, Mr. Walker, his financial situation is now in question. His declaration lists his net worth at approximately $4.5 million, derived heavily from his partnership at the firm. He has also incurred, according to his own filings, over $300,000 in legal fees for this proceeding. It seems he is the one in a more precarious financial position. The room was spinning. Mark Walker, the Titan, was poor. Not by normal standards, but by the standards of the woman he was divorcing, he was a rounding error. And finally, Judge Sandoval said, there is the matter of Miss Walker's business, Artisan Folio. As this business was started, funded and built during the marriage, without a prenuptial agreement, it is considered marital property. Alice's heart stopped her. Olivia had warned her this was the one risk. Mark looked up. His eyes, for the first time, were feral. Hope. Was he entitled to half? Half of her $12.8 million. However, the judge said, the law is not blind. It is clear from the testimony that Mr. Walker not only didn't contribute to this business, he actively belittled it. He provided no financial, emotional, or logistical support. In fact, his contempt for Miss Walker's hobby is the only reason this asset remained hidden. He cannot, in good conscience, be allowed to profit from his own ignorance and cruelty. She looked directly at Mark. Therefore, the court awards Mr. Walker a one-time payment from the business assets as his total and final share. The sum of $1. Someone in the gallery choked. You can't! Mark screamed, finally exploding, his sad, disappointed mask gone, revealing the raging, terrified man beneath. That's my money. She built that while she was my wife. That's half mine. Bailiff, Judge Sandoval ordered. You gold-digging. Mark lunged, not at Alice, but at the table, scattering papers. The bailiff was on him in a second, pinning his arms behind his back. Mr. Walker, you are in contempt of court. You'll ruin me. He was sobbing now, a desperate, ugly sound. His custom suit was wrinkled, his face blotchy. The Titan had fallen. You ruined yourself, Mr. Walker, Judge Sandoval said, banging her gavel. This court is adjourned. Alice and Olivia walked out of the courthouse and into the bright, cold November afternoon. Alice was breathing as if for the first time in 20 years. The air was sharp. The colors were brighter. Alice! She flinched. It was Mark. He was standing on the courthouse steps, disheveled. The bailiff had released him. His lawyer, Donovan, was already halfway down the street, walking fast, not looking back. Alice, please, he said, his voice hoarse. He was trying to reassemble his sad, reasonable face, but it was shattered. We can't. This is a mistake. We can appeal, or we can talk. Alice stopped. She looked at him. She didn't feel fear. She didn't feel anger. She felt pity. He was so small. Talk about what, Mark? She asked, her voice calm. About Us, he said, desperately. You were incredible. What you built, it's genius. I never knew. Why didn't you tell me? We could have been a real team, a power couple. Olivia Hayes put a hand on Alice's arm, but Alice gently shook her head. She had to do this. You told me I was cute, Mark, she said, her voice soft but carrying. You told me to not stay up too late. You told me I was bad with money. And today you told the court I was a delusional woman who had done nothing with her life. I was wrong, he said, stepping toward her. I was an idiot. Alice, I love you. I've always loved you. I was just stressed. The firm, Tiffany, that was a mistake. And there it was, the final, pathetic lie. Alice actually laughed. It was a short, sharp, genuine sound. You don't love me, Mark, she said. You love my company. You love my portfolio. You love the idea of what I can do for you. But you don't even know me. She turned to walk away. You'll be back, he yelled, his desperation turning back to rage. You're nothing without me. You're still just that scared little woman. You'll fail, and you'll come crawling back. Alice paused. She turned back one last time. You said I wouldn't know how to earn a real dollar, she said, looking him dead in the eye. You were right. I didn't. I was too busy learning how to earn millions. She turned and walked away. She and Olivia got into the back of a waiting sedan. Not a flashy one, but a clean, professional car service. As the car pulled away, Alice's phone buzzed. It was a text from her lead developer, Grace. Platform update is live. 99.9% uptime. You're free, boss. Alice looked at the text. She looked at her lawyer. She looked out the window at the city of Boston, her city, flying by. Where to, Ms. Walker? The driver asked. Olivia, Alice said. Would you like to get a drink? I hear the bar at the Mandarin Oriental is lovely. And then, she said, a slow, brilliant smile spreading across her face. I think I want to go to my office. I have a company to run. The heavy glass door of the Mandarin Oriental bar hissed shut, sealing Alice and Olivia away from the street noise and the raw, lingering adrenaline of the courthouse. The bar was an oasis of low light, warm wood, and the quiet clinking of expensive glassware. It was a world Mark Walker had introduced her to, a world of power and privilege she had only ever observed as a guest. Now, she was here as a victor. They sat in a plush, high-backed booth. A waitress, discreet and professional, took their order. Olivia ordered a Macallan 18, neat. Alice, after a moment's hesitation, said, A glass of champagne, the best you have. When the drinks arrived, Olivia raised her glass. To AW, the quietest titan in tech. Alice smiled, a real, unrestrained smile that reached her eyes. She touched her flute to Olivia's tumbler. To Olivia Hayes, the lawyer who reads her files. They drank. The silence was comfortable, a shared breath after a long, brutal war. He really didn't know, Alice said, more to herself than to Olivia. She watched the tiny bubbles rise in her glass. All these years he looked at me, and he saw nothing. A void. A well-maintained void. How is that possible? It's not just possible, Alice. It's common, Olivia said, swirling the amber liquid. Men like Mark don't see people. They see assets and liabilities. You were, in his mind, a lifestyle asset, a depreciating one. He was too arrogant to ever imagine you had your own balance sheet. His contempt for you was, ironically, the greatest gift he ever gave you. It was the cloak of invisibility you used to build an empire. Alice nodded, absorbing the truth of it. The whole time he was calling me unstable, delusional. He was projecting. He was the one living in a fantasy where he was the only one in the room who mattered. Her phone buzzed on the polished table. A text from her sister, Sarah. "Just got off the phone with Mum. We are screaming. I'm booking a flight. I'm so proud of you." Another buzz. A text from her daughter, Emily. "Mum, what's going on?" Dad called and he was crying. "He said you ruined him." Alice's heart clenched. The children. In the fight, they were the collateral damage, or she had to fix it. "I have to call them," she said, her voice tight. "I need to explain." "Do you want me to step away?" Olivia asked. "No, please," Alice said. "Stay." She took a deep breath and dialed her son, Thomas. He was the one who had been more thoroughly poisoned, the one who idolized his father's strength. He answered on the second ring, his voice wary. "Mum." "Hi, Thomas. Are you somewhere you can talk for a minute?" Yeah, I'm in my dorm. What's going on?" "Dad is—" "I know. Your father and I were in court today," Alice said, keeping her voice as calm and factual as she had been on the witness stand. "There was a disagreement about our finances. He said you were asking for all his money, that you were lying about, I don't know, a knitting club?" Alice closed her eyes, the pain of that small, dismissive phrase. "Thomas, what I'm about to tell you is the truth. It's all in the court record. Do you remember my knitting project in the attic?" "Yeah, the database thing?" "Yes. That database. It's a company, a real one. It's called Artisan Folio. For the past 4 years, it's been my job. It's a platform for artists to sell their work." "Oh, okay. So, like, you made a few $100. "Last year, Thomas," Alice said, her voice steady. "My company's net profit was just over $4.8 million. My total personal and business assets are significant. I'm a wealthy woman, honey. I built it myself, from nothing." There was total silence on the other end of the line. Alice could hear a faint sound of a video game in the background. Then it was muted. "Mum, what? Is this a joke?" "No. Your father. He didn't believe it either. He told the judge I was delusional and had never earned an honest dollar. So I had to bring in my financial advisors from Morgan Stanley to testify. They showed the court the balance sheets, the tax returns, the patents." "Patents? You have patents?" "2 of them, yes," Alice said, a small note of pride she couldn't suppress. "For a software algorithm I wrote." "Holy crap," Thomas whispered. It was the sound of a 19-year-old's entire worldview shattering and reforming in real time. "So, all this time, when he said you were just—" "I was busy," Alice finished for him, gently. "And I was quiet about it because, well, I was scared. I didn't think he would react well. I was right. He was very, very angry. Not because I had the money, Thomas, but because I had it. And he didn't know. He lied," Thomas said, his voice cracking. "He lied to me. He told me you were spending all his money and that you were sick. But you were. You were a CEO. You're like a tech CEO." "I am," Alice said, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm still your mum, but I'm also that. Yes. Oh my God," he said, and now he was crying. "Mum, I'm so sorry. I was such a jerk. I believed him. It's okay, Thomas. He's your father. You love him," Alice said, the tears streaming down her face. "But the court case is over. I needed you to know the truth. I am not unstable. I am not delusional. And I am not a nobody. And neither are you. I love you, Mum," he sobbed. Wow, I'm just... Wow. I love you too. Call your sister. Tell her the truth. I'll call you both tonight, okay? She hung up and looked at Olivia, who was pretending to be fascinated by the ice in her glass. Well, Alice said, wiping her face. That's one down. That, Olivia said, was more important than anything that happened in the courtroom. You just got your son back. Meanwhile, across town, Mark Walker was experiencing the social physics of a catastrophic fall. The velocity of his ruin was breathtaking. He had stumbled from the courthouse, blind with a rage so pure it left him shaking. His first call was to his managing partner, Richard. "Rich," he barked into the phone. "You won't believe what this judge just did. It's a travesty. We need to appeal. We need—" "You need to shut up, Mark," Richard's voice was arctic. "You're on speaker with me and our general counsel. Did you or did you not commit perjury on the stand?" "What? No, I was misinformed. How was I supposed to know?" "That your wife of 20 years is a tech millionaire?" Richard shot back. "That's your business, Mark, but my business is the firm. And you, on the stand, under oath, just painted yourself as either a comically inept fool who can't read a financial disclosure or a perjuring, misogynistic bully. Neither of which works for our brand. The Globe's courthouse reporter has already called us for comment. Partner at Sterling Equity Fund commits perjury in divorce hearing. How does that sound to our investors?" "Richard, I can fix this. It's a misunderstanding. You are suspended, effective immediately. Your access to the firm's accounts is frozen. Do not come to the office. Do not contact any of our clients. A courier is on his way to your home with the formal notice. We are reviewing the partnership agreement to determine grounds for termination. You are a liability, Mark. A $12.8 million liability." The line went dead. Mark stood on the sidewalk, the phone in his hand. Liability. That was his word. He was the one who cut liabilities. He was shaking. He needed Tiffany. She would understand. She would soothe him. He called her. "Mark?" Her voice was small, scared. "Tiff, thank God. Listen, it was a disaster. Alice, she faked. She has. It's a long story, but I'm in trouble. I need you." "Mark, I can't," she said, her voice fast. I'm at my apartment. A man was here, a process server. I've been subpoenaed as a co-respondent." "Mark, her lawyer has. They have receipts. The hotel in the Caymans. The necklace you bought me. It's all in a file. They're saying dissipation of marital assets. Mark, I could be liable." Mark's blood ran cold. Olivia Hayes. That bitch. She'd had this in her back pocket the whole time. If the hobby argument hadn't worked, she was prepared to go after his infidelity. She's not just a tech founder," Tiffany whispered, a note of horrified awe in her voice. She's surgical. I can't be associated with this, Mark. My career... Don't call me again. Please." Click. He was alone. He had no job. He had no mistress. He had a $125 million judgment against him, payable in 90 days. He had over $300,000 in legal fees to a lawyer who now wouldn't even take his call. He would have to sell the house. The house he won. He would have to sell it just to pay Alice her share. He looked up. The city he used to own was just a collection of cold buildings. He had never, in his entire life, felt so utterly, terrifyingly small. Alice paid the check with her own black card, and the two women stepped back out into the afternoon. "What now?" Olivia asked. "Now," Alice said, pulling her coat tighter. "I go to work. I've been running a multi-million-dollar company from an attic. I think it's time I saw my actual office. The Artisan Folio headquarters was in a converted warehouse in the Seaport district. It was all exposed brick, warm light, and the quiet, focused hum of a team at work. She had leased the space 6 months ago, but had only ever visited on weekends, terrified of running into someone Mark knew. She walked in. Her lead developer, Grace, a brilliant young woman Alice had recruited from MIT, looked up from her standing desk. The small team of 12 employees turned. They had heard. The news had ripped through their internal Slack channels. No one cheered or clapped. It was better than that. Grace just walked over, a mug of coffee in her hand. We got the conference room set up for you. The big one, with the view," she said, a massive, proud smile on her face. "Welcome to your life, boss. It's about damn time." Alice took the mug, her hands wrapping around the warmth. "Thank you, Grace. What's our status?" "Platform is stable. Uptime 98%. We just pushed the new UI update to beta. And, this came in about, well, right when you were in court, actually." Grace handed her an iPad. It was an email, not to the general info box, but to Alice's protected founder email. The sender was from the corporate M&A division at Adobe Inc. The subject line was, "Confidential inquiry, https://google.com, search, artisanfolio.com. The email was brief. It expressed deep admiration for her elegant and proprietary platform and her dominant market position. It requested a preliminary, confidential call to discuss potential synergies. The old Alice would have thrown up. Her hands would have shaken. She would have hidden the email. The new Alice took a sip of her coffee. She read it again. She looked up at her team, all watching her, waiting. She looked at the office she had built, funded by the code she had written. "Grace," Alice said, her voice not wavering, not even for a second. "Get Michael Chen on the line, and call Olivia. Tell her I'm retaining her for corporate counsel. Set up a conference call for tomorrow at 10. Let's find out what synergies Adobe has in mind." She walked toward the corner office. She paused at the window, looking out over the Boston Harbor. She wasn't a wife in an attic. She wasn't a dependent spouse in a courtroom. She was a founder, a CEO, a creator. She had spent 20 years in silence, but now the entire world was about to hear her roar. The courtroom doors close, but Alice Walker's story is just beginning. Her victory wasn't just in the money, it was in reclaiming her own name. She proved that the most dangerous person is the one everyone underestimates. We've all seen a Mark in our lives, someone who dismisses, demeans, and tries to control. But we've also seen an Alice, a person whose strength is building in silence, waiting for the perfect moment to turn on the lights. What part of Alice's story resonated with you the most? Have you ever witnessed someone's hidden strength completely change the game? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were gripped by this story of justice and vindication, please show your support by hitting that like button. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their own hidden power, and to make sure you never miss another story of karma, revenge, and the underestimated. Please subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell.